Good evening, everyone. But we hope to leave you with inspiring stories that you can take away from here and not see this just as a conversation around failure, but around resilience and how some young leaders are showing the way around that. On a lighter note, yesterday Manoj and earlier this morning Chintan spoke about how they were first speakers and then shifted to being moderators. As a long-term friend of Selco, I have always been chosen as a moderator, so read into it what you will. Maybe I'm a complete failure. This session pertains to emerging leaders or champions whose work has been recognized as having the potential to have create significant impact. Just to set the context, I can't see too much in the audience, but I wanted to find out how many people here are social entrepreneurs? Show of hands, please. Whoa, that's a very small number. Is that about 5 hands? I don't know, the light is shining straight on my face. About 10? Okay. Okay, that's probably a challenge of this conclave that we've not had enough social enterprises here. Okay, let me frame it differently. How many youngsters who feel that their organizations give them the freedom to behave entrepreneurially? Again, that's not a lot. Oh, wow. Okay, so my next question is going to be even more challenging. Those who put their hand ups, please keep them up. And how many of you all have taken the guidance of Selco and actually over these 2 days in every one of your conversations spoken about your failures? Okay, I can't make out, but it looks like that's just about 2 or 3. So that's another failure. So the idea of this conclave is to create a safe space for all of us to be able to talk about failures, and especially those who are out there on the ground trying to create impact. We don't seem to have had enough enterprises who are trying to create impact, which is surprising. So there's more people like me in the room who are trying to play the role of enablers and not probably doing too great a job of that. And also, it looks like it's not been a safe space to then talk about those failures openly. And so in that regard, I think I really admire both Gary and Chung, emergent leaders who are still willing to talk about their journeys and share their experiences of the setbacks that they've had and how they've overcome them. So maybe let me start off with Gary, who has co-founded this organization called Sungai Watch, and Sungai meaning rivers in Indonesia, so I did a little bit of research on that. So they've really been focusing on protecting the rivers and avoiding plastic waste flowing into the oceans. So let's hear about Gary's journey. Gary, about 5 to 8 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Selco Foundation and the Ramon Magsaysay Foundation for celebrating the young ones here today. It's really such an honor to be amongst so much experience and wisdom. I'd love to get, before we begin, all the people that are 30 years old and younger, if there's any in this room, stand up.
That's a lot more.
Let's stand up a little bit.
That's a lot more.
And please give a big clap to all these young leaders. I think so many of us don't realize that, we're born, at least us young people are born in this world where climate change and environmental disasters are our current realities. We grew up watching An Inconvenient Truth in school, watching ice caps melting, and this is the failure of our previous generation. So another big clap for the older folks in the room.
You have messed up the world, is it?
When I was asked last week to think about a failure in my young life, it was kind of challenging because youth nowadays don't celebrate at all failures. I grew up on the beautiful island of Bali that I'm sure many of you know is Paradise Island. Actually, Indians are now the second biggest visitor after Australians. But Bali has a dark side to it. It's not just beautiful beach. This is the same exact beach in Gibran, just south of the airport, literally covered in plastic. And for the last 15 years, I literally dedicated my life with my siblings to try to make sure that plastics would not wash up on Bali. You know, we started 15 years ago. Back then, the plastic waves were mostly organic and natural debris, but very quickly, plastics came into the picture. So we thought about stopping at the source. It took us, a few years to realize that we needed to stop plastics in rivers. So we developed these simple trash barriers to stop plastics from cleaning rivers, and our entire goal was to make sure that next rainy season, there would not be another plastic swell. First year of running Sungai Watch, we set up to install 100 barriers. We set up 3 sorting centers. We think we're successful. But that very rainy season, plastics pushed up again. And it was almost like a breakthrough moment. We looked at any evidence that we could find on the beaches to look for where it may come from. To realize that so much of the plastics on Bali was coming from the island next to Bali and Java. And that's where we started, okay, well, maybe we need to solve it at the root cause. So we scaled our work to the neighboring island in Java, did exactly what we were doing in Bali, scaled up to about 100 barriers, hired more troops, went into the schools, educated, mobilized communities. And this year, just a couple weeks ago, right on the day of Christmas Eve, the biggest plastic wave ever washed up on Bali again. And that moment felt like the biggest failure for me. All of our work, collecting almost 3 million kilos of plastic to realize that we're just a tiny drop in the water. And so, we mobilized thousands of people during the last few weeks, trying to really put a dent to see for more evidence, but to realize that it was not just East Java we would set up our operation, but it was actually the entire island of Java. Java is the most populated island in the world with 150 million people. And so all of a sudden, you realize this problem is much bigger than you can think. It feels like a never-ending battle. Are we failing miserably every day, the work that we're doing? Are we just cleaning the floor in good faith and not really addressing the root cause? And so this got me thinking, if we want to stop plastic in Bali, do we need to fully clean up Java? And that's really the big issue that I'm currently experiencing. But through this failure, I learned that, failure is only failure if you stop. We learn, we adapt. And today we've realized that this problem is bigger than just Bali or Java. It's systemic, it's global. And now we need big solutions. So we keep going, we try to do whatever we can, but not just to clean up, we need to stop the tap. And, the real failure is to give up. Thank you.
Next we have Chung from Heng Foundation. And again, I read up, Heng means wisdom in action, which sounds really interesting. So Chung has been looking at promoting equal opportunities and eliminating discrimination against marginalized communities, minorities. And so within that, he's focused on health and a few other issues. So Chung, can you take us through your journey, please?
Yes. All my life, I've been focusing on anti-discrimination, social stigma campaigns, most importantly, HIV-related. And that all began when I was in high school in San Francisco, when one of my high school teachers died of AIDS. And after that, I became a lifelong volunteer of the cause. But like many other typical Asian American families, we have tiger moms and very demanding parents, and also super achiever cousins in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. So I took the more typical Asian American journey. I went to, after high school, I went to Columbia and Harvard and started working in investment banks with Lehman Brothers and UBS. According to my career path and life path, my life is very unlikely to cross paths with a group of 8 orphans in rural China. But life works in a very mysterious way. And slowly, step by step, I was relocated to Hong Kong and doing projects in China, and I learned about that in the 1990s, a lot of poor peasants in China had to sell blood to make a living, and due to unsanitary blood collection practices, partly in government-owned hospitals and blood stations and partly in underground stations, many have died of AIDS, and their children have become orphans. Although most of these children do not have HIV themselves, they are stigmatized, abandoned, and just like leprosy decades ago in many parts of the world. And because of my lifelong passion of HIV, I started to take care or try, and I try to, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of cover up in local villages, and I encountered a lot of village politics. The dynamics is very different in different parts of China. So I was kicked out, I was brought to police station, I was in some parts of the villages, I was politely sent out by bus. But I was very persistent, and I think these failure did not stop me from helping these children. So whenever I was kicked out or sent away by buses, I would secretly go back again and again to the same place and the same villages. Finally, we were able to convince some people, the teachers, some village chief to cooperate with us. And slowly, one village after another, we started our program. With first putting them back into the local school system. We have not built a single orphanage or a special school for them. We don't want to institutionalize them. So we put them back in the local school. And then we started a number of psychosocial support programs to help them. And then after 20-some years, we have now cumulatively supported 40,000 children and youth. But throughout the process, as a social entrepreneur, we have to do a lot of things in a new way and creating new solutions. So there has been a lot of failures along the way. I was told to talk about one, which more personal ones. So I actually, when I was in New York, and I volunteered for AIDS support organizations like Gay Men's Health Crisis. So I've seen adults passing away. Well, at that time, there was a time without the antiretroviral treatment. So, but in China, what I couldn't stand was the children dying, and also dying without sufficient medical treatment, and most of the time without dignity. And that, I think, over the time really made an impact on me. Although these children was my motivation to keep going, but at the same time, 3 years down the road, these visual images and experience came back to haunt me. So about 3 years down the road after I started doing this, I started having nightmares, would wake up in the middle of the night and started crying without reasons. And then I became, and at that time I saw a movie called The Beautiful Mind. I started to realize that I might have some problem, because it's very ironic, because we advocate that these children are traumatized and they need, and then we provided art therapy, music therapy to heal their trauma. But there's nothing to heal my trauma after 3 years. So I have officially never seen a psychiatrist, but I have started constant, regular chat with my psychiatrist friends. I have not taken any prescription drugs, but I have started to take natural, clinically proven antidepressant called dark chocolate. And later, my sister's temple's master also was an instructor of Vipassana, and I joined her in 3 full 10-day sessions afterwards. And that really was very helpful in, I didn't realize that there were a lot of traumatic experience was suppressed, and then it floated up, and then you're supposed to observe and put away, and that was very helpful. I want to share that with you because this is actually sometimes when we have to present ourselves as very a strong leader, especially as a founder and in front of our volunteers and staff, we also have our weakness points, and then sometimes we are not allowed to expose that, and sometimes that if we don't deal with that, it would lead to a more important, more serious failure, so I would leave that.
Thank you very much for being so open and sharing about the challenges that you face personally as you were doing the work that you were doing. So the thing that actually, gets me thinking is a lot of the people that we heard in this session earlier are people who were recognized for having had significant achievements. So it's a lot easier for them to come up on stage and say, hey, yes, 10 years ago we did something wrong, and, but nobody's going to say anything against that because they're already recognized as people who've succeeded. I'm just curious, having been recognized as an emerging leader, which means you're still very early in your journey and you've already got this recognition, what kind of pressures did that put on you? Was there a pressure that you couldn't fail? So how did you deal with that? And I think you spoke a little bit about that, but maybe I'll start with you, Gary, and if you can share a little bit on that, and then Chung as well.
Thank you. No, I mean, I think it was a giant honor to be selected as a laureate. Something, so far to think. I remember when the foundation first reached out, I had never heard of them. They pretended to be the University of Manila, and so they did a vetting process only to find out a little bit more about it and some of the incredible awardees that were nominated. And just to be on that same list, I think, it's like people are here and I'm just really beginning the journey. But it does put that extra pressure, but they're only here to help, and they're only here to pave the way and see how we can really scale our work. Because the award is Filipino, I was basically given a silver platter to expand our work in the Philippines. And so, went on a couple of trips to set up meetings with key government officials. The funding was there. But for us back home, the plastic beaches and the plastic rivers were still very filled up. So I think we had a major realization of, are we ready to scale that quickly? And so really focusing more on the local impact before scaling it. So, but sometimes because these environmental problems are just so big and so major, you don't have the time to wait. So, I think you're never ready for these moments, but it's just trying to navigate that.
I am actually very grateful to be part of the Magsaysay family. Not just by receiving the award, and that of course was very highly recognized and very honored, But the Magsaysay Foundation really has this strong sense of family. To give you an example, when I went to receive the award, all the staff, there was an opening, welcoming night. And then we have like the dance and music and show. And then later I learned that all the performers were the Magsaysay Foundation staff members. And then he's a driver. He's the secretary. And then they were all performing, dancing and singing. And so this is really a big sense of family. And what I get from the foundation is not just the honor, but actually personal growth and support. For example, as a young emerging leader, awardee, I was introduced to older awardees who became my mentor. And the foundation introduced me to Kumichai in Thailand and also Sri Ilabat of India. And one of my trips to India was to spend 2 weeks with Sri Ilabat in Ahmedabad and visiting many of her programs. And that was an eye-opening experience, and I got very inspired. And when I went back to China, we started doing something similar, such as mobilizing the female HIV-positive women to do eco-bag workshops, and we sold these laundry bags they manufacture to hotels, and we have cumulative 86 hotel clients. So they got income and dignity and sustainable way of living, etc. So I think I'm very grateful for the foundation, not just giving the award, but actually treat me as a family member. And the older member also inspired me and become my mentor. So 20 years down the road, when I'm old and hopefully have something to contribute, maybe one day I will, take on some young people too.
So Susan, I wanted to come to you now and just reflect a little bit on how this Emergent Leader Award that you've been given over the last 25 years, has it actually changed? Has there been some learning based on the leaders that you identified earlier? Have all of them gone on to become the next awardee of the Magsaysay Award for having achieved something? So how do you see the experience of the Emergent Leadership Award, and based on also the stories that they shared?
Well, the foundation has 3 main goals. One is to inspire by finding all these great people that are doing selfless work in the community. Most of them are surprised when we call them, because the farthest thing from their mind is getting an award. But once they do get it, and many of them are shy, they don't really want to talk about it, we encourage them to come out, because their lives could inspire other people in the same work that they're doing. Because as we all know, the work that we do, everyone in this room, is hard. We take it home with us. We take it personally when people don't have electricity. We take it seriously when we know that the children that we are providing for, whether it's education or safety, are about, I myself have had that experience with another foundation in the Philippines, when you would get calls late at night saying that one of the children escaped or wanted to commit suicide. I mean, this is something you take with you 24/7. And so I think that building of a community, the safe space for you to be able to talk to someone who understands you, who will not, poo-poo the way, if you cry about it, if you have, you just need that sense of community. And so I think that's what we were trying to do, is to have the older members of the community take care of the younger members that are in the same type of work. So it's been an enriching experience for us. It's been wonderful. I just wanted to acknowledge as well, Sir Abed is also one of our, Fazel Abed, Hassan Abed, who is the founder of BRAC. I know that Asif was here as well, like doing the presentations. Anshu Gupta was here as well. You know, these are just people that have such big hearts that have been open to mentoring some of our younger people as well that are in their leadership journey.
I'm going to, you know, take a question out of Harish's book to the Selco folks. So I'm assuming funding for the work that you're doing is critical. So what is that one thing that you're probably not telling your funders?
Over the past 5 years, since 2018, we have had 5 consecutive years of deficit. Some of our program funders are doing very badly after COVID and, you know, on the verge of bankruptcy. So a lot of the funding was, you know, discontinued. We have to rely on ourselves. And during COVID times, a lot of the activities were not allowed to take place, such as, you know, fundraising dinners, etc. And now, even without COVID, when COVID is gone, the economy simply wouldn't allow us to do a lot of the activities, or the response wouldn't be there. So, after 5 years of deficit, we have changed our income model by increasing the offline sales and also increasing the income from social enterprises. And also we started mobilizing our fellow alumni, people who graduated from our program, to donate back to us, you know, things like that. And then we also try to preserve try to maintain the same quality of services to the existing beneficiaries by not accepting too many incoming students, etc. And then we've realized, during this crisis, we also realized that we have a lot of, we don't have a lot, but we have some idling assets that can be turned into income. And at the same time, some of the things that we needed money to do can become donation in kind, etc. So that is...
yeah, so we started as a foundation. So, you know, you could sponsor a single barrier in a river, sponsor a village, but very quickly, you know, our warehouses got entirely filled up, you know, as big as this theater. And so we needed to do something with the trash. And so, you know, we started Set Social Enterprise to recycle the plastics into furniture. And so part of the discussion with the funders was that, like, okay, guys, we're going to sell the plastic to our social enterprise to be able to really find a funding model to be able to self-grow and monetize. And so it's been an interesting one to speak to the funders and see how we can grow and sustain the business and sustain really the foundation to really look for a funding model.
Okay, I'm not sure either of you answered my question, but I wanted to leave a good amount of time for questions from the audience. So can we have some questions from the audience, please?
My name is Dipankar, based out of Bangalore. So you talked about working in China in a very sensitive area, right? Something which is not socially acceptable. So did you face any challenge apart from whatever you talked about at the political level, because it might become bad news for some people?
What's the last sentence? What again? Sorry.
Yeah. Apart from the challenges which you faced from the people, local people, did you face any institutional challenge about your work who wanted to prevent you from working in this space?
So far not, but I know many of our fellow organizations have encountered something like you described. They were either asked to leave, or they said the program is no longer needed, our problem is solved. So they're shrinking in many of the programs that I know.
I'll stand up because there's a question for Gary, and I don't see you from where I'm sitting. When you told your story, I thought of Sisyphus, you know, carrying his up the mountain, and I have huge respect for that because I imagine you could be happy doing it. But my question to you is, what is on the side of avoiding plastic, and what's your assessment of the global situation on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it feels sometimes that we're literally on the front lines trying to stop what's coming at us, but it really starts upstream. So obviously there's the Global Plastic Treaty happening, trying to put pressure on actually putting regulations in place. In Indonesia, that's really where we're focused. EPR doesn't exist. We actually have one of the biggest databases on auditing brands, scanning over millions of scanning millions of plastics every single year to put pressure, and so it's just endless failures, discussions with governments to introduce them what a potential EPR law can be in Indonesia, to tax producers, to ban single-use plastics. There's been several bans happening in Indonesia on single-use plastic bags and other single-use plastics, but you're speaking to very similar to India, where it's just way too complex to just stop at the source. The fossil fuel industry is so major, so powerful. In the next decade, we're set to triple our plastic production globally. So this looks really, really bad as fossil fuels is moving towards EV. Everybody's moving towards plastic production. So this beach might be a lot more beaches like that everywhere around the world.
This is a question to Gary. You worked on basically the rivers. Rivers is a huge, in fact, portfolio. So when you are working, how you worked with the local governments, how you actually navigate, because they have a lot of regulations, how actually you impacted the regulations. We really wanted to know, because we also have the same problem even in our state. Of course, I really congratulate you. I really inspired by listening to you, the stories of the way you actually, protected the HIV. We also have a lot of HIV population, Northeast, I think especially certain districts. So, and also substance use, how to remove the stigma, how to provide the support. I think a lot of learnings I think we can learn from you. Thank you. Thank you.
And so we've slowly been making our way up all the way to ministries. But unless we have the popular community vote and community accept our solution, then we can't go anywhere. So we've really been working with a lot of religious figures. So in Bali with Hindu priests, in Java with Muslim imams, really to get this up in front and center. And now it's really being accepted. We're actually overwhelmed with messages on social media of every government out there reaching out for our solutions. And it's really incredible. It's such a small, easy scale solution. You can put a barrier, have a team clean it up. And that's really disaster relief, and that's where you start. And then you at least prevent plastics from going to the ocean and go upstream. Every barrier is a symbol of education. And every barrier is an opportunity for us to really engage with that local community, with the schools around it, with the local market around it. So for us, it's really a symbol more than anything. But yes, India is our biggest reach. I think we have more than hundreds of thousands of followers from India. And every city has reached out. So it's definitely high up on our list. I accepted this invitation to see how we can scale our work. So if any of you have potential connections or are involved in the plastic field, I'm all open ears. Okay, well, there you go. Let's start. Let's start tomorrow or today. Thank you so much.
So I have two questions for both of you. One is, this is emergent leadership under 40 years. And usually that's the stage when someone is looking for building my career, doing my stuff, accumulating my wealth, ambition and everything. So what is that one motivating factor in your hearts that pushed you to do this? This is question one. And question two is, you are still very young. So what is the biggest barrier that you faced when you started your journey out on this?
For me, it was very easy. At that time, I didn't realize that I would be doing this for almost my entire life. It was just like stepping out of banking. I thought it was just a few years. And then I basically saw a problem. I saw villages after villages of children dying of AIDS and also becoming orphans, and I really need to focus full-time on this and put it back into the school system, raise some money, and have a psychosocial development program for them. And then a few years down the road, when they are in better condition, I can always go back to banking. But afterwards, because at that time I still have the mindset of a banker, thinking that, oh, if you want to retire, you need amount of money to retire comfortably. So this is, this is like a short-term fix. But after doing that, I could go back to banking, but I don't think there's a need. I met a lot of people who are very wealthy donors, but they're not very happy. Then I met a lot of people in the villages. They're relatively poor, but they're very happy. So I think there's no point to go back to pursue more wealth. And I think the pursuit of happiness to me is more important. And there got to be a better balance. And I don't need another bag. For example, I live to this stage, I never bought a car. And a lot of the material stuff, it's not really necessary when you think of that. And then you can spend a lot more time pursuing happiness. So I don't think there's a need to go back. And then I also fall in love with my job. Seeing children growing up gives me a lot of sense of pride and achievement. So I decided to stay. So the decision to start doing this is not difficult. But staying for so long, people were amazed. But for me, I felt very happy.
I think similar, for me, it was really that shock factor of seeing plastics wash up on the beach that I would surf, run, enjoy, where I grew up. I've been in Bali for 20 years with my family. And literally jumping in, like 14 years old, not really knowing what to do. You could say, I remember yesterday when Lane was saying, what do parents want their kids to be? Lawyer, engineer. My parents failed miserably. All three of the kids, my two co-founders, my sister and brother, we're all in this together, trash people full time. There's no money, but there's that pride of doing good every day, of waking up and knowing that whatever impact we can do, at least it's for the future generations. And it should have started with your generation. So we have a lot of work to fix.
So both your stories are very inspiring. Congratulations. But Gary, you gather so much of trash. What do you do with it?
I briefly spoke about it. So we have like 10 sorting centers in Bali and Java. We handpick every single type of plastic, sort it into 30 different types of material, and then recently launched a Sungai, like a design venture to turn it into things like tables, chairs. 2 years ago, I made a tiny home from 35,000 plastic bags where I live from the trash that we collected from the rivers. So it's literally anything that you can make out from this material and really give it a second life. It's so much about changing the value that plastic has value and should be disposed. And it's if we can set up proper collection streams, then it's not there in the environment. So there's so much education around that.
I just wanted to add, you should see his coasters, tissue box holders. We're telling him to come up with all kinds of things as well. The Jenga, where you put those little things. I think he's going to come up with something for the holidays. But he's turned plastic into recyclable materials that we can reuse in our homes. So, no, we're very proud.
Basically, the stories that you told us at the very beginning, when you talked about going to these villages, being kicked out, and then going back, I think I related to that in the sense that I've not done something like this, but that's one of my biggest fears when working in the communities. And so I'd really love if you could tell us some more stories on what were the points at which people started to change their minds, like what worked, what convinced people, or what helped the general population overpower these influential people who clearly had, had an animosity towards your work.
Well, there's, I could talk for a very long time, but I give you two stories. One is that one was from the secret police who kicked me out. Many years later, we became friends, and then they took me out for dinner, and then they were half drunk, and then said, "Oh, Mr. Toh, we're very sorry that we have offended you back in those days, because we thought you must have some ulterior motives. So you might be a spy from America." Then we looked at your email, and we looked at you, or you might be preaching Christianity or some religious motives, and then we found out no. And then we finally came up to the conclusion that you must be selling fake drugs to make money, selling fake drugs to these HIV positive. And then we found out it's not the case. We came up with all these hypotheses because we did not believe there is such a good person without any motives. That was back in, but so it is reasonable for them to question and to suspect back in those days. And later on they told me that. So you have to be very persistent to them. And my second story is that in every village that I went to, there's always people who are willing to help and can in a position to help, but they never approach you. They were not the first batch to approach you. The first batch to approach you are those who have the key holders to the villages who might want to get something from you. But I later on found out that many people actually were observing you. If you uphold your clean, uncorrupt standard, the people who can help and are genuine and kind would later on secretly approach you and help you, secretly or behind the scene. So whatever you do, you have to be very persistent and stand up for your value because somebody's watching.
Okay, that'll be the last question. I've already been given a warning that we were supposed to close 5 minutes ago.
I just want to ask one question to Gary regards to the water preservation. So my question is like PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, all these big, huge corporate, and I heard that they are funding a lot of this water preservation and conservation, but they are also the one biggest who create this problem chain. So I want to understand, as you are being a practitioner in the field, I want to understand what is your viewpoint to this problem chain.
Thank you. So we're mostly donation funded, through people that follow us on social media, just the general public that is trying to protect Bali and Indonesia. We've never accepted money from the bad guys. We call them the bad guys, but the corporates, and I don't think we ever will. But it's really just putting that extra pressure. A lot of them are not at all abiding by the standards that they're saying. They're setting high targets, announcing with the UN and other international organizations big goals. But then when you look at the reality of what's happening on the field, it's all greenwashing. So I think it's just very interesting to space, just to watch out, to make sure that we can remain pure. And thank you.
It's interesting that you mentioned about the UN. So no, that's okay. So we have unfortunately entered into a regional partnership with Coca-Cola Foundation to look at the issue of plastic. So the bad guys are
Good luck.
apparently looking at this problem which they created, but hopefully they will also correct themselves, but I don't know. I can't talk about the UN agencies. I'm too small a cog in that. But it was really great listening to your stories. I want each of you all to take maybe 30 seconds or less, one sentence for the young entrepreneurs in the audience, an inspiring message, whatever you want to share. Closing thoughts.
You want to start?
That's not too tough.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think staying true to what you believe in, and really remaining dedicated to the work on the field. Don't get distracted by Coca-Cola. Sorry. But yeah, really staying true to what it is, because I think I'm 15 years in. I started at 14, but really Sungai Watch started 5 years ago, and I'm not yet seeing the ripple effects of our work. And I know that it's a long life ahead to see real proper change.
I'm actually very fortunate because I said in the beginning, life works in a mysterious way. I bumped into these children and I found my passion in life. And I have been very happy, although challenging, and with failure, I'm still very happy to be doing what I'm doing and enjoy and have a fruitful career. So, but that is, I hope all of us can be happy and find our passion and be persistent and stick to it.
Okay.
The work that we've chosen is really laden with a lot of difficulties, but this is the reason why we're here, is because we want to fight for certain things that we think are important to us, whether it's about fighting for climate change, for the environment, for fighting for children, for education, whatever it is. Let's not forget the reason why we are doing the work that we're doing, because that is what's going to fuel all of us to continue the fight. It's a long journey ahead of us. We know all the problems, but if we use our failures, if we use our disappointments to fuel us to, I was looking at that questionnaire when we all when we all started the conclave, and they were asking, what do you do when you do have failures? And I saw the dots. Some are resentful, some are angry, but I think many of the people are finding it a reason to just restart, refresh, and move forward. So I am once again so grateful to our host, Harish, and the Celco team for giving us the opportunity to share the work that we do and the wonderful work of our Magsaysay awardees. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. So I just wanted to end on that note, because I had a lot of feedback after the first session today that it really rattled people, and why we focusing so much on failure. Why can we not talk about the inspiring stories? And so I just wanted to end on that slightly positive note, but I just wanted to reflect on a conversation that I had with a young Celco Foundation person. And what she said was, in her setup in Northeast India, the conversation they have is, we've always grown up with this idea that if you fail, there's something wrong with you. Our parents have taught us that failure is a bad thing. And we are finally coming to a place where we are encouraged to fail, because only through failure will we break that barrier and achieve some kind of impact. So I think that's the ecosystem which is really great to have. And Celco Foundation is trying to do this in a larger way to create this platform to talk about failure. It's the third edition. I was part of the first edition. I still don't think we've got there in terms of getting people to speak more openly about failures. And we need probably 100 conversations like this in different fora until we know that only when we share these stories will we learn from each other and we'll be able to create the impact that we're looking for. So on that note, salute to you who are fighting on the ground, and a salute to all of you in the audience here who are working towards that. So let's have a big applause for everyone here.